Good evening, everybody. Please be seated. I'll say it again. Good evening, everybody. Well, welcome to the meeting of full council this evening. I'm the Mayor of Rugby, Councillor Simon Ward, and will be chairing the meeting. This meeting is being web streamed to the public through the council's YouTube channel. During the meeting, if you wish to speak, please use the push to talk button on the microphone in front of you. Before we begin the formal agenda, I will ask the Deputy Chief Executive to provide details of the evacuation procedure for those present.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. There is no fire drill scheduled in the building this evening. If the fire alarm does sound, then please make your way out of the building, down the main staircase, out of the main doors of the town hall, and congregate at the entrance to Caldecott Park. An officer of the council will give instructions on when it is safe to return to the building.
Thank you. Are there any apologies, Deputy Chief Executive?
Mr. Mayor, we've received apologies from Councillor John Keeling.
Mr. Mayor, you should have Dale Keeling as well.
Thank you. I just noticed the empty seat there. Yeah, thank you. Okay. To approve the minutes of the meeting of council held the 10th of July 2024. I move that the minutes of the meeting of council held on the 10th of July 2024 be approved and adopted. Who will second the motion?
I will, Mr. Mayor.
Those in favour, please show. I think that's everybody. The motion is carried. On to declarations of interest. Can I remind members that when they declare interest, they must also declare the general nature of that interest? Now, I'm also going to read out. So, with regard to the notice of motion relating to the winter fuel allowance, those members affected by the proposed changes would not have a pecuniary interest and would therefore be able to participate in the debate and vote. Members who are currently in receipt of winter fuel allowance may have a non-pecuniary interest, and Democratic Services will engage with those relevant members, and these will be recorded in the minutes. So, following on, are there any declarations under non-pecuniary interests as defined by the Councillors' Code of Conduct for Councillors? No? Any pecuniary interests as defined by the Councillors' Code of Conduct for Councillors? No? Notice under Section 106, Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax? No? Okay. So moving on. So Mayor's announcements. So firstly, it was my Mayoral Civic Sunday service at St Andrew's Church on Sunday, and I'd like to thank all who were involved in organising and everyone who attended and took part in the service. It was lovely to have such community engagement from the youth of our borough, which also ties in with my mayoral theme of youth. This included my local village school choir from Long Lawford Primary School, 2 young children from the Rugby Ukrainian community, my mayoral cadet and other local cadet groups, and many more. As I say, thank you to everyone who took part in the service and showed your support. So secondly, you will have likely seen that I'm meeting all the different teams within the council and promoting what they do and how to contact them. I've known this since I first became a councillor, but it's nice to see the enthusiasm within each team. On this note, I would also like to give a special mention to 2 members of the work services team, refuse collectors Darren and Snowy. You may have seen the story regarding 4-year-old Rory, who has cerebral palsy and autism. Now, Rory's an absolute superstar. I've met him myself, and he has a passion for the refuse lorries. Darren and Snowy, they always go out of their way to speak to Rory and spend a bit of time with him whilst on their rounds every fortnight. They've built up such an amazing relationship with him, and I just want to say a big thank you to Darren and Snowy, quite frankly, because in their words, they say it's only 15 minutes of their time every fortnight, but to Rory, those 15 minutes mean the absolute world to him, and it really is a case of going above and beyond. So next, I'd also like to mention, to give mention to our returning rugby Olympians from Paris 2024. So Lauren Henry, Chelsea Giles and Kimberly Woods. Now, again, you may have seen I've been championing and promoting their events at the Olympics and beyond, and the whole of rugby has been behind them. I've already had the pleasure of meeting and welcoming home Kimberly and Lauren, and I'm in contact with Chelsea as well. So we're looking to link up at several different engagements, including potential school visits, as they're all such inspirations to the youth of our borough. You may have already seen that Lauren Henry was my guest at a couple of events recently, including meeting the newly formed Rugby Police Cadets, which is a great asset to the town, and the school's Rugby in Bloom Awards, which she came along to as well. Following the conclusion of the Olympics and Paralympics, I'm delighted to see that we will be honouring all three ladies with the title of Freedom of the Borough, and look forward to the formal confirmation. So, item number D. So on this Monday this week, I attended Rugby High School, along with other distinguished guests, including the High Sheriff of Warwickshire, the former High Sheriff of Warwickshire, and Eric Wood, OBE, for the launch of this year's High Sheriff for the Day. So for 2024, the competition will be open to students in years 10 to 13, so ages 14 to 18, from all 13 schools in the borough of Rugby. The closing date for entries is the 18th of October, so a few weeks' time. Now, I'm delighted to be one of the judges for this prestigious competition being held in Rugby. And with my mayoral theme being youth, it's great to see opportunities like this for youngsters, and I would encourage all to enter, as this is a fantastic opportunity. So do please promote this as well within your wards to your local secondary schools. There can only be one outright winner, but life skills can be learnt for everyone along the way. And I look forward to seeing the entrance and supporting the High Sheriff. Now, there's lots more that I could add, as so much has happened and taken place in the borough since our last meeting a couple of months ago. But I'll just reiterate, I would urge everyone to follow the Mayor's social media pages to see some of the many great things that go on in the borough. Now, I would now like to hand over to Councillor New, who has something to say.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to take our minds back to the last meeting of full council in July, where we were debating shop fronts in the town centre. Unfortunately, in my eagerness to represent the views of some of the residents I represent, I raised some of their comments about shop fronts in the town centre and mentioned Don't Tell Mum. I wish to make it clear, Mr. Mayor, that the comments I raised were specifically about the shop name and not the management, employees or the products they sell. And as this wasn't explained clearly at the time, I would like to offer them my sincere apologies. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Mr. Mayor, if I may. Councillor New, can I thank you for that apology? I really think it's a good thing for you to do. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll second that as well. Yeah, thank you, Councillor New. So on to item number 5. So questions pursuant to Standing Order 10. Are there any questions, Deputy Chief Executive?
Mr. Mayor, there are 4 questions which have been circulated to all members and published on the Council's website. The first question is from Councillor Poole. Councillor Poole submitted a question for the Regulation and Safety Portfolio holder, Councillor Claire Edwards, regarding car parking fees and payments to Ringo.
Councillor Poole, do you have any supplementary questions?
Yes, thank you for the reply. I appreciate the reply, Councillor Edwards. In your reply, you state there's been an increase in take-up for our car parks. Could you please supply me and the Chamber in the near future with the increased figures of our car parks?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for the question and for the chance to clarify. When you say the figures, you mean income generated?
Yes.
Fine. Yeah, I can certainly do that and make sure you get it.
The second question is from Councillor Gillias. Councillor Gillias submitted a question for the Growth and Investment Digital and Communications Portfolio holder, Councillor Robinson, concerning resourcing in the Council's enforcement team to enable prompt responses to planning breaches, particularly outside of normal working hours.
Councillor Gillies, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Thank you to the portfolio holder for that response. I think it was very good. And I know from conversations we've had, we're going to be working closely together to resolve all the problems that we find, especially regarding issues regarding intentionally unauthorised sites around the borough. But I do have an additional question, and I've got to make it fairly well clear that a lot of these sites, the intentionally unauthorised sites, are very well organised and developed over probably a long period of a weekend, a holiday weekend. The Easter weekend is normally the most interesting one, to get 4 days in a row where a green field can be transformed into, well, something totally different by Tuesday morning. So this is a difficult one, and somehow we've got to resolve that problem in a timely fashion. But my question is, whenever, after a prolonged cycle of planning permission refusals and dismissals at appeal, where intentionally unauthorised development sites continue to breach enforcement notices, will this council be prepared to implement direct action pursuant to Section 178 of the Town and Country Planning Act, which is entirely in the powers of this council so to do? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So, in your question, Councillor Gillies, you didn't explicitly indicate that this was your line of questioning in the original question. So now we get to the heart of the matter of your concern. We have had conversations about how to address the the difficult situation in which our communities, plural, find themselves in, and I include the Gypsy Traveller community within that. It is a very sensitive issue. It is an issue that this side of the House does want to resolve, and we seek to do that working collaboratively with our Conservative colleagues who are responsible for those rural wards. So we will continue those conversations in Planning Services Working Group. It's not a taboo subject for me. I'm keen that we look at it from all angles and that we make measured decisions on this. So I won't be drawn on that at this point, but I'm very keen to continue the conversation with you. Thank you.
The third question is from Councillor Daly. Councillor Daly submitted a question for the Partnerships and Wellbeing portfolio holder, Councillor O'Rourke, requesting an update on progress of parks improvements which had funding approved at full council on the 6th of February 2024.
Councillor Daly, do you have any supplementary questions?
I just wanted to thank the portfolio holder for the detailed response, and I look forward to seeing improvements to the park coming in the near future. I would just implore her to hopefully get a chance to have a look at Frobisher Road Park and York Street play area, because I think they're probably the next ones that are in desperate need of improvement, and that would be great if we could see some progress there. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, thank you. Thank you very much for the question. And of course, my door is always open, as is the head of service as well. We welcome meetings with all of the councillors on all sides of the chamber. And yes, we will keep you up to date. Thank you.
The fourth question is also from Councillor Daly. Councillor Daly submitted a question for the Finance, Performance, Legal and Governance portfolio holder, Councillor Mystery, concerning an update on the wards which have seen the largest increase in roll numbers since the general election, and a difference between the 3-member wards with the smallest and largest number of registered voters.
Thank you. That was a bit of a mouthful as well, wasn't it? Councillor Daly, do you have a supplementary question?
Well, I have to say it's such an exciting question. I don't know how I can top that. Many of you will know I've got a particularly nerdy interest in democratic equality, and I've raised concerns before in the chamber about how there are some wards in our borough that are growing very, very quickly. Hillmorton being one, Admirals and Corston being another, and now they are becoming quite disproportionately heavier, larger, bigger than some of our smaller wards, such as Bilton and Eastlands, for example. So I know there were some questions to clarify. I think what I was interested in is the number of registered voters who are able to vote in local elections and the impact that that has on our boroughs and making sure that our voters across Rugby have an equal vote, a fairer vote. We've seen new boundaries in the recent general election, and I think my question is, how far are we away from having maybe the Boundary Commission knocking on the door and asking to take a look at our boundaries here in Rugby? So if there's any chance of that information being shared in the near future, I'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Daly, I think we're all on the same page. We're also the election agent with Councillor Roodhouse and a couple of other people across the chamber, and I've raised movement of more than 10%. I don't know why this plays up all the time. and obviously we are looking at the boundary review. We should have had one maybe 12 years ago, and it got put back. Members knows who were there at the time, and we're waiting for the Election Commission to come back, and when they're ready, that we would like to look at some of the boundaries which have gone past more than 10%. Hill Morton is one with Holton, Adams and Colston, and obviously Dunsmore. So quite clearly, we're all on the same page. And some of the officers are chasing up, I think, from
Thank you, Councillor Mistry. I think we need to make a note about looking at your microphone, definitely. Yeah.
That's why I'm moving over the other side.
Yeah, it's definitely broken. So, okay, moving on to item number 6. So, to receive the report of Cabinet dated the 16th of September 2024. In submitting the report of Cabinet, if members wish to raise questions or to comment, will they please indicate they wish to do so when I call the item? Councillor Robinson, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 1 of the report titled UK Shared Prosperity Fund Year 3 Spend?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'd like to move this report. So this.
Thank you.
Do I need to get the seconder now,
Yes,
or do I speak to it now? Yeah, sorry. Go on.
Can we have a seconder, please?
I'll second the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Robinson, would you like to speak on the report?
Thank you. I will get used to this. So this is the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, now known as Central Government funding. It's the third and final year of the funding, and all funds must be spent by the 31st of March 2025. The paper sets out how we intend to spend the lion's share of the rest of that funding, which includes 750,000 approximately for Rugby College to develop an electric vehicle centre, which will enable them to train people in electric vehicle mechanic skills, which are sorely needed, not just locally, but across West Midlands. These are really good skills that we need to develop in rugby. Another thing I did want to point out is the revenue environment, which might be a question that people have got, of 58,000 for administrative and management monies. This has been advised by central government that we can add this now. So that's kind of a retrospective fix. Now we've got that information through. There was a question at Cabinet about the business hub, which has been invested to the tune of £55,000, and that's the business and community hub. And the question at Cabinet was about when it will be ready. I think the answer I gave was, the plan is to have it ready for the end of October. And I've checked with the officer, and the plan is to have the works done by the end of October and to be ready and moving in and operational during November, as stated in the report. So there's no update yet on that. And so what remains, you'll see from 1.5 is the £96,000 of capital that, funding that remains to be allocated. We have put calls out for ideas to all councillors, and I'd remind you again, get in touch with me if you have ideas on that. And so we have got a list, and we're working our way through that, and we'll come back to October Council with a paper on that. So there we go.
Thank you. Councillor Picker.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor, and thank you to the portfolio holder for introducing this item. It feels like it's been a long time that we've been talking about UK shared prosperity funding, and I think the first time that we on this side introduced the item, I think you, Councillor Robinson, spoke about wanting to have a lasting legacy, that it shouldn't just be bits and pieces here and there. And I think this project, this electric vehicle centre at our own rugby college just down the road, is a great example of being able to do something and have that long-lasting thing, and it ties into the great automotive history that we have in the West Midlands. So it's a fantastic project. I hope everyone will support the use of this funding this evening. And finally, because we may not talk about UK shared prosperity funding too much more, I do just want to place on record my thanks to my colleagues on the partnership group and to all the officers who I know have put in an incredible amount of work behind the scenes, often on very short time scales, in order to actually get these projects to a deliverable position. So thank you very much for that. You know who you are.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to also say how excited I am really that we're going to release the funds for the electric vehicle mechanical training. I think in a context of moving to a world of zero carbon, where we're trying to decarbonise transportation and more electric vehicles are on the road, and where we want our residents to be able to move with where employment is happening and move into the industries where there is new employment, that it's a fantastic opportunity that we will be training the next generation to work on the electric cars instead of what will become obsolete skills on some of the petrol and diesel cars. So I think it's, I'd like to just put on record how happy I am that some of the government funding is going to go towards this, and we look forward to the first cohort in 2025 academic year who will be the first to go through that training. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Okay, Councillor Robinson, you're right to reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, thank you to everybody, really. Just to put your mind at rest, Councillor Picker, I think we definitely will be still talking about this central government funding for a little while just yet. I think maybe we should just throw an informal party at the point at which we finish the process and invite the officers along and say a big thank you, because yeah, you're right. There is a huge amount of work that has been going on behind the scenes to make this all possible. So yeah, thank you both.
Councillor Robinson, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 2 of the report titled Town Centre Regeneration Progress Update?
Yes, I so move. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
And who will second the motion?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'll second the motion and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson, would you like to introduce the report?
Yep, I can. So essentially this report is a report for information on the progress of the town centre regeneration and the work of that working group and the work streams that it's been taking forward. I see this report as a bit of a transition. I think there's a lot of tidying up to do as we move from one administration to another. And I look forward to this whole area gathering pace in the near future. But that's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Are there any speakers? No? Oh, Councillor Picker.
Yes, I think, this is obviously an update report. There has been a lot of work again behind the scenes to get us to this point. I I think one of the benefits of setting up the cross-party working group is that we all know that this piece of work is going to take a number of years, and it's probably going to span a number of administrations. So I think it's important that we all continue to focus on working together, because I think we do actually all really want the same thing. And it would be remiss of me not to thank our colleague, Councillor Roodhouse, who is continuing to chair it so well. Thank you.
Are there any more speakers? Sorry. Councillor Moran?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to playfully respond back. There's not a whole range of different administrations as we start to see the regeneration of the town centre, because I think one of the things that's come very clear in the last couple of months is the frustration of different town centre businesses, residents, that there's been lots and lots of talk in the past and little action. So I'm really happy that we've got this report out. It sets a line under what's gone on in the last couple of years. Some background work has been done, some important background work has been done, but now the real action hopefully takes place and goes forward in the coming months and years.
Are there any more speakers? Councillor Robinson, you're right to reply.
Not much to say, I don't think. Just thank you for your comments. And, I went to my first town centre working group, so I've got nothing to compare it to, first time, not as chair, but as an attendee. And I felt hopeful. Like, it felt to me like there were some really tangible things that we're now taking forward. I look forward to all working together, like you say, in a cross-party way. Thank you.
Councillor Robinson, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 3 of the report, titled Confirmation of Article 4 Direction, Houses in Multiple Occupation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I so move.
Who will second the motion?
I'll second that and reserve my right to speak.
Councillor Robinson, would you like to introduce the report?
Yes, I would like to introduce the report. So my first house in Rugby was a terrace house down Oxford Street. One of the streets that now has several houses and multiple occupancy. So on very many levels, I'm very excited to be bringing this forward, this paper, this confirmation of the Article 4 direction. I'm proud that when we sat here in opposition, that Labour councillors across the town centre wards brought this forward. So, it's... I'm very excited to be bringing this paper forward, and that Councillor Harrington is seconded. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any speakers? Councillor Sanderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad to see this is making progress, but we do need to manage expectations. It's not going to come into effect until February 2025. And I wouldn't want the residents to feel that this was a magic bullet that will solve all the problems of houses in multiple occupation. It solves some of the problems. And of course, the areas that are affected, New Bilton, Ben, Eastlands, etc., are sort of those are the areas that are most affected at the moment. But of course, we then have to move on to ensuring that something is within the local plan by 2027.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Harrington?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has been a long process. I mean, I annoyed a lot of the councillors on planning meetings to bring in HMOs in, because I had a lot of residents saying that this has had enough, they wanted some change. And for me, starting as council, being in Brough Street, completely green, didn't have a clue what I was doing, but I was just trying to do the best for my residents. And after time, with data, with information and things like that, with petitions, with Councillor Slinger did a petition, and I want to say some thank yous to Gaynham, Kayla and Carl from Grosvenor Road. We had a lovely meeting in the 7 Stars. We discussed what we wanted to do. We got a petition over 600, and it just proves that we can make a difference and residents can make a difference. And I do want to say thank you for the other side, because a lot of people spoke to me about this issue when I was told to them about how many HMOs in Ben, about 64-65%, which were over 6 and above. And just want to say thank you, guys. Cheers.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson, you're right to reply.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Sanderson, for reminding me about the local plan and the process, and sort of reminding me that there is a bigger picture as well in terms of this whole agenda. And it also speaks to, and I also wouldn't want anyone watching who lives in a house of multiple occupancy to think that we are, opposed to these forms, that, to the kind of housing that those people need. So for me, this is about, as a council, making sure that we bring forward more low-cost housing options, and so that we get people out of private renting situations that actually can be quite crippling. It's really quite staggering how much money you can have to pay for that one of those bedrooms in a HMO as well. So it's about, there is a bigger picture here, and it is about a raft of solutions, both for those people who are occupying HMOs at the moment and for those people who feel that their streets are effectively overpopulated with people and cars. So, so thank you to everybody that's helped it get this far, and sort of thank you ahead of time to my colleagues around the chamber to help us to really crack this nut from all angles. Thank you.
Councillor Robinson, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 4 of the report titled Development Management Service Review Update?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I so move.
Who will second the motion?
I'll second it and reserve my right to speak, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson, would you like to introduce the report?
Yes, thank you. So this report is essentially an update report. It's the outcome of an independent review of the development management service that the council provides. There were some recommendations in the report for us to take forward, and I'm reliably informed by the Chief Officer that those actions are either in progress or planned. So, yeah, effectively that is the report. It's mainly for information.
On that note, are there any speakers? No? Oh, sorry, Councillor Moran, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add how positive and appreciative we are of getting this done, because it sets a baseline of where we are with such a key function. Because I think the clue is in the name in terms of the growth element for what the department can do for the town and for the borough is absolutely fundamental. And I think it gives us an opportunity to look to target investment where it's needed. So, yeah, I'm very happy that this report is done.
Councillor Picker.
I'm going to do something I almost never do. I'm going to agree with Councillor Moran. No, in all seriousness, it was an important... I'm sure we'll get to that bit. In all seriousness, it was a really important piece of work that I think began a little bit earlier on this year. As Councillor Moran has just said, it's a very important function within the council, and it is the engine that's driving a lot of the things we've already talked about this evening. So it's a vital piece of work. I'm glad the report has come through, and I fully endorse the recommendations.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Okay. Councillor Robinson, you're right to reply.
Yeah, thank you. And so for anybody that does take the time to go through the report, I think the other thing I'd like to say is it's a really good reflection of how we do operate as a council in that department. So thank you.
Councillor Mistry, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 5 of the report titled Finance and Performance Monitoring Q1 2024 to 25?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do move.
Who will second the motion?
I will, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Councillor Mistry, would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the mic is working this time. The budget, these 3 items that I'm going to move is that this budget for financial year 24-25 was set in February 2024 by the previous administration. And this is the first report for the financial position of the organisation, which is Q1. I'm going to switch over. And there are pressures across the services, and just want to highlight couple of areas that's quite worrying for as a council. One is the domestic waste collection and recycling. This is due to third-party bulk freight external contractor at Shelbourne currently being used, and pressure has been increased due to unforeseen waiting time and delays. And the team has been set up to look at this situation as a priority. And the other area is obviously the financial general services, that quite clearly there's a pressure because of the audit fee, which we should have picked up in 23-24, and it's added another 100,000, and which is going to be passed on in the next financial year and so on. The other one is the general HR fund. There is a lot of pressure on it, running at over £900,000, and this is on the unplanned maintenance and repair. But I've been assured by the portfolio holder and the officers that at the end of the financial year that will be equalising. So I move the report as printed, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any speakers? Councillor Lawrence?
We brought in this paper into scrutiny, and we did go through this very thoroughly in scrutiny. So can I firstly thank the Chief Officer for Finance and Performance for answering our questions at that time. Unfortunately, the portfolio holder wasn't able to attend for understandable reasons. We would like to therefore, I would like to just register there was a question we had around the policy on reserves. As you've just summarised, there is probably a £1.4 million overspend just on people, £500,000 in training services, 300,000, and it carries on. Okay, so it's a number of different items causing that. So it was just to come back in your position on policy on reserves, and that was to come back to scrutiny, but just registering on that at the moment. There was a more general comment, which was around KPIs. The KPIs are off reported one way. The finance is reported in another, and they're not associated. So most of where the money has been spent is because there is a negative KPI in place. So I think the question back on this is performance now, is round back to your, the Cabinet members if they can look at how those KPIs are being linked to the finances and how the finances have been done. We did find out on Monday night that we didn't have an issue like as a council, which was shocking to me. So that's going to be discussed in audit and ethics tomorrow, which is great. I'm sure we can fix this, but we must start running the council on the KPIs. And that's my take. Okay.
Are there any more speakers? Councillor Moran?
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Lawrence, you're in the wrong party. It's been 2 months in this administration. You're highlighting the issues that we're taking on board now. This is 20 years of chaos and mismanagement that we're having to deal with. So fundamentally, agree with everything you've just said. KPIs are not aligned to performance. The strategy of budget in terms of reserves and expenditure and income is not aligned. It will be. So the coming months we can have some great debate. And I look forward to that at the next time a report is put forward.
We are the opposition.
Sorry.
No,
sorry. Councillor Lawrence, you can't have a... sorry. Are there any other speakers? Oh, Councillor...
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Some of the pressures that we're reporting on... Sorry. I haven't been here very long, you've probably noticed. Some of the pressures that were highlighted in the report are external, particularly on audit. This is something that all councils have suffered. There's been a general uplift in audit fees. So that's been an external event over which this administration has no control over. The issue of the facility at Sherborne, in fact, we're sending more stuff to be recycled, which is a good thing, but both the revenue received from that recycling and the charges associated with that. The revenue is considerably less per load and the charge per recycling is greater per load. I would hope that in the next few months we'll be able to mitigate that.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Okay, Councillor Mistry, you're right to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to reply to Councillor Lawrence. Just quickly, that I've been working very closely with the Chief Officer Finance. Quite clearly, we got a SIF officers come in to look at the reserves and all the money that's sitting around and how best to do, how we're going to use it. And the leader has quite rightly alluded, that we are seriously looking at all aspects of the service and the money that's in the pot. And also, if you look at the council website, we also got the performance dashboard, looking at each and every service and looking at the KPI, how it's operating. So we are trying to keep on top of the finances, and hopefully that we will rebalance some of the pressure that we put on ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now submit for confirmation and adoption of the whole report. In moving for confirmation and adoption of the whole report, this can take place en bloc or upon any member request. A vote can be taken separately in respect of each report. Does any member wish for a vote to be taken in respect of each individual report? No? Okay. I now submit for confirmation and adoption the whole of the report. Those in favour, please show. The motion is the report is carried. Yeah. Item 7, to receive the reports of officers. The next item is to receive the report of the Chief Executive set out at item 7A of the agenda. The report concerns an urgent decision taken under delegated powers relating to the establishment of a temporary transport manager post. Councillor Livesey, will you move the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Who will second the motion?
I'll second the motion, Mr. Mayor, and reserve my right to speak.
Councillor Livesey, would you like to introduce the report?
Yeah, so this has followed an incident in the Work Services Unit a few weeks ago, and it became clear that there was a significant lack of expertise around, or capacity, I should say, around the management of the vehicles, and it was deemed necessary to bring that in as soon as possible. So that's what this is about.
Are there any speakers on this? Yeah, okay, so straight to the vote. So those in favour, please show. The motion is carried. So on to item 8, notices of motion pursuant to Standing Order 11. Set out at item 8 of the agenda is one notice of motion. In accordance with Council standing orders, I consider that this should be considered and debated this evening. Councillor New, will you please move the motion set out at item 8A of the agenda, notice of which has been given under Standing Order 11?
I so move, Mr. Mayor, and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Who will second the motion?
I will, Mr. Mayor, and I reserve my right to speak.
I call on Councillor New to speak about your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to hope that all members of the House will support this motion, Mr. Mayor, and we have a unified approach. I am very concerned about the impact this will have on the residents who aren't eligible for this payment. And obviously, I know it's about saving money, a massive black hole left. Not surprising, really, considering we've had 2 years of COVID and the impact of the war in Ukraine. It's not surprising that we've got this massive deficit to fill. I'm also aware that the Chancellor of Exchequer has had a 10 billion windfall from the Bank of England selling loss-making bonds, which should go quite a long way towards helping to fill that black hole. Very concerned about the analysis that the Labour Party's own previous analysis claimed that this policy could lead to 3,850 deaths. And he said that he's having to take this to stabilise the economy. I'm very concerned, Mr. Mayor, about how these people, elderly people, are going to be expected to fill in 22-page document with 243 questions. A lot of elderly people are struggling with many health needs, sight problems, possibly dementia, and a lot of them are alone, haven't got people to support them with this, they're not connected to the internet. Some people will probably have to get rid of their internet connection to be able to afford to heat their homes and eat over the winter. I'm hoping, Mr Mayor, that our colleagues will support this motion. Whether it'll have an impact, I don't know. I'm hoping that it will, if we all have a combined front. I'm not sure if the Chancellor of Strathclyde will change her mind. Maybe three ghosts visiting at Christmas might make a difference, this bar humbug attitude. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any speakers? Councillor Simpson-Vince.
I can't believe I got in first there. A lot of our elderly population have never claimed benefits in their life. And to ask them to do so now, to get a payment, just seems wrong. I know from my family recently, an ill parent was entitled to benefits, but would not fill in the form because she didn't want the stigma almost of now at this age in her life having to fill in a form to apply for a benefit. So I think there are other ways of doing this if that's what the Labour government decides it wants to do. But I think saying to people that they need to fill in a 22-page document for a benefit that they don't feel they want or don't feel they're necessarily entitled to, they'll look at other people and go, they need it more than I do. It's not a generation that's sort of looking at credits and looking at benefits and saying, well, I'm entitled to that, I'm going to apply for it. And I just think we need to be careful about how we respect that generation to say, you don't have to fill in a 22-page form. You know, there are other ways of doing it through looking at taxation or looking at thresholds, but doing it this way just feels so wrong and just feels so disrespectful. Thank you.
Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm fully supporting of this notice of motion because Labour could have done it better. It could have raised the cap on the pension credit so that more people would be entitled and there would have been a bigger take-up. It could link that to council tax. For example, those in properties A, B and C, which are likely to be those most likely to be in retirement, sheltered or terraced property. It's something that it could have been targeted property. And to be honest with you, Sharon Graham is right. The last thing you expect a Labour government to do is come down heavily on pensioners when the mega wealthy, the super rich, and those who have really creamed it off from our society, from very large businesses, have got away scot-free in terms of taxation. So this is an unfair tax on a very vulnerable group of people, and I very much share my colleagues' concerns that many of these will end up getting, they won't put the heating on, they won't claim the benefit, they'll end up with hypothermia and they'll be on their ways to Walsgrave acute unit. That's what will happen. So I'm really, especially with the MP here, who I think was whipped in like a whipped boy to obey his three-line whip. If they could go back and think again before the Chancellor makes her speech in a few weeks' time. All it needs is a little more thought and a little more care and a little more ability than we've seen from the current Chancellor.
Thank you. Are there any more speakers? Councillor Timms.
I understand that
you know, things are not that great as regards money. But actually, you've just become the nasty party who picks the pockets of pensioners. That's what you've done. You may laugh, you may think it's funny, but actually, tough choices don't have to be cruel choices. And that's what you've done. There's over 7,000 pensioners in this borough who will be affected by this. And they're earning, what, 13,000 a year? If you're on the new pension, it's £220 a week. But pension credit can only be claimed at 218. So would you want to live on 13,000 a week? It's a fixed income. You've no opportunity to make any more money. You're spending your time in your home because that is where you feel you've made a contribution to society. You've worked hard all your life. You've had this heating allowance for something like 27 years. And in your own words, Labour, this is the single biggest attack on pensioners in a generation. Your own words in 2017. That's your own words. That's what you said. And you didn't put it in your manifesto. You took money from pensioners and you've given it out to rail workers, nurses, everybody else. But you've taken it from the very people who can't alter how much they earn. They can't. And they're very hard to reach people. We know that. They're not people who rock up and are there to receive household support grants or any of those sort of things. They're people who are very proud. They've worked, they've paid their duties. And I think what you have done is the most abominable thing for our society here in Rugby. And it'll be down to councils to pick up the gap again. And charities, community groups, they're the people who will be looking to support these pensioners going forward, because that's what they will do. But it's wrong. It's very wrong. And if you look into your hearts, I'm not sure they're there, but from your laughter, but if you look into your hearts, you can tell it's wrong. Tough choices don't have to be cruel. But you've made them.
Councillor Parker.
Well, I think I'll speak probably surprisingly tonight, in that I'm not here to attack the government. I'm not here to attack the opposition members. I think you're squirming, and I think it's an awful place to be in. Because trust me, I've been there. My government has made decisions that I didn't agree with, and I've had to suck it up buttercup too, and it feels awful sometimes. So I'm not a hypocrite. I'm not here to attack the government. In fact, I congratulate Councillor Slinger on his appointment, and I look forward to his good work throughout the borough. What we're here to do is mitigate the impact of national decisions locally. I spoke at scrutiny last week about how we can do that. We can assess the impact of this heinous decision on our local communities, and we will. And I urge everyone to get involved in that to see what impact it has if they don't U-turn on it, which I hope they do, because it's awful. It's almost unbelievable that I'm here speaking about something that is just almost unimaginable for a Labour government. But that's the government. We're here as local councillors. Let's do what we can. I really respect the notice of motion. Thank you, Councillor New. Your heart is always in the right place, and I respect you, not just as a councillor, but as a woman. And I know you share my will, as other scrutiny members do, in making sure that we look at this going forward. And Councillor Roodhouse, you've got some great voices who care about the community. It's been said that the whole country's got buyer's remorse. I hope you're not getting remorse about who you choose to set your allegiances with. Thank you.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Mayor. I first of all want to say I am 100% in favour of this motion. I am particularly concerned about our residents who are above the pension credit but below the living wage. And I'm very concerned about residents who will be frightened to put the heating on even if actually they could afford it. And that's a comment I've heard from a lot of people. I don't think I can have the heating on this winter because I've lost my fuel payment, when in actual fact they're not maybe that tight, but they're worried, and they're really worried. And it makes, and those are hard conversations to have with people. Those are really hard conversations. Say, well, have you thought about, a heated blanket, to keep you warm at a lower cost, and all these kinds of conversations. And they're really hard conversations to have. They're not fun conversations to have with people. But they're exactly the same conversations I had 2 years ago when the winter fuel payment was taken away from most disabled people. I'm just going to finish on that point.
Any more speakers? Councillor Willis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't need to dwell on wider media coverage, the question time debate that we may have watched last week, the continuous social media feedback on this issue, the heating or eating debate, or indeed the impact of doing neither. That fine line between being eligible for pension credit and just missing the cut. The public backlash. I'm sure that in your own wards you will have heard the anger, the outrage, the fear in those older residents' voices. We're all aware of the rhetoric surrounding this issue, filling a £22 billion hole. The April 2025 pension rise. No mention in the election manifesto, incidentally, and no lead-in time to put this decision in place. No impact assessment carried out. The impact on those vulnerable people it affects most. Or the impact of a wider pension credit take-up, which would thus cut out the planned saving. I'm reminded of election night back in July, prior to us opening the boxes, and a private conversation I held with a member of the opposition that night, and we compared our notes. And I came away thinking, I got a sense of integrity, a reason for doing what that person does in terms of standing up as a councillor. I would love to continue that conversation, having seen the decision that's been taken. And again, I would echo Councillor Parker's congratulations to Councillor Slinger on his success. I'm reminded, in closing, of an analogy that Councillor Moran made earlier in the year to the pantomime horse and the Conservative Party, or indeed this side of the House. Little did we know at that time. This was only the beginning of the pantomime, and very soon other characters would appear. The pantomime villain, the pantomime baddie, who incidentally, traditionally, ladies and gentlemen, enters from the left. No inference implied, ladies and gentlemen. Into a green light, better known as the limelight. Something, I would suggest, is currently being enjoyed. That green light. However, let's be clear. This pantomime baddie is set on creating another pantomime character, a generation of barren hard-ups. I'm sure some of us are all now waiting to see who is going to be cast in the roles of the comedy duo, the silly Billy character, the principal boy. In the meantime, all we can do And having reached state retirement age in April this year, the generation that I represent is hiss and boo these pantomime villains as they bring deep unhappiness, illness, hardship to the older generation, and very possibly in some cases the ultimate sacrifice. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg you, I implore you, change your minds that so my generation have at least half a chance of living happily ever after. Thank you.
Councillor Moran.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wow. It's, I stand by my earlier comments, Councillor Willis, of your skills at oratory, but my God, that was farcical. And you've turned a very serious matter, in your own words, into a pantomime script, so congratulations. To respond to Councillor Timms, I can't speak on behalf of colleagues, but I certainly was laughing at the barefaced hypocrisy. But I'm going to start here in a very different way. Councillor New, I thank you for bringing this notice of motion to the Chamber. And I'm going to use my words very, very carefully. I completely agree that it is absolutely essential and important that matters like this get discussed properly. And so in responding, I want to respond in two parts. The first is to anyone out there who ignores those theatrics and is actually concerned about their welfare over the coming months and years. Because that's clearly, I would hope, everyone's priority. The national government and the local council here absolutely committed to anyone that deserves and needs that winter fuel allowance will receive it. As has been pointed out in the notice of motion, 900,000 odd who are entitled do not receive it, or do not take it in. That's the story. That's the absolute scandal here. That it's very well having a society, as Councillor Simpson-Vince wants, where everybody gets everything. That's great. But not for that nearly 1 million people who absolutely need the winter fuel allowance and not receiving it. We didn't hear discussion of that last winter. That didn't make the right-wing media headlines. So over the last couple of weeks, I've been working with officers, and who, again, commend absolutely for all the work, because that's the priority, with partners focusing on the most vulnerable. The next issue, as has been pointed out, are those that just miss out. Now, again, thank you to officers. We have calculated approximately 1,100 pensioners in the borough miss out on the new qualification by about £100 a month. So working with partners across the board, we're engaging on that. We're rolling up our sleeves to understand how we can help those in that category. And for that purpose, we're including a commitment of 250,000 in this budget coming forward now to address that inequality in rugby, because it's not just old age pensioners. That's one element of society that are currently facing hardship. There's much more work to do. So we've got to look at food and energy poverty across different measures. But given the start of this, the second part of my response has to be in relation to the politics of this. And with that, and with regret on a personal level, we will vote against this notice of motion, because it's not a complete picture. In an ideal world, of course we want that extra £200 or £300 to go to every pensioner. Of course we do. And again, we need to think how long it's been in place. Absolutely. But the country is in an absolute state. Liberal Democrats, Conservatives, even bloody Reform acknowledge it is in an absolute state. The 22 billion black hole is not a figure of someone's imagination. It's real. The argument from the Conservatives is that it should have been seen. So someone's like burnt down the house, running off with the matches. Of course you should have seen it coming. And Councillor New, it's not just Ukraine and COVID. 6.5 billion is the asylum bill that was never budgeted. 9 billion for public sector. They deserve respect. So the hypocrisy of councillors opposite saying, oh, can really appreciate all the hard work of officers in this town hall. They deserve to be paid with respect. Again, the right-wing media will characterise train drivers getting X 100,000 or whatever it is. Less than 0.5%. It's about nurses, it's about teachers, the people that make this country tick. They deserve respect with that public sector pay rise. And that has to be paid for somehow. Now, the difference between the two governing parties. Labour were forced into making these hard choices. Not because they wanted to, because they had to. The difference is that over those last 14 years, the Conservatives wanted to. Austerity was a choice. Read the biographies, they've all come out with them, all the autobiographies. The Conservative politicians of the day, it was a choice. The Liz Truss budget, that was a right-winger's dream. Let's give that a go. We're all paying for it now still. This puts the level of deprivation and poverty that's caused into minuscule comparison of the difficulties that are being picked up. And locally, I'm glad you raised locally, absolutely we can do better. I'm not even going to talk about the local plan, which we all hope and believe can be an absolute passport for change. I'm not even going to mention the SIL money for once. I'm not. I'm tempted, but I'm not. In November 22, my good friend John Slinger and I put forward a notice of motion on the cost of living crisis. Now then, there were smirks. There was absolute silence. The impact of that cost of living crisis affected more people across this borough than we're talking about now, and including pensioners. So you're right, those poor pensioners who were worried about their heating bills. It's all in the record. Councillor Slinger and I begged, beseeched, let's do something. We were both new, fresh councillors. Let's work on this together. The then leader dismissed it. Let's put it polite. It was dismissed out of hand. So, remind me, please, those voices we've just heard, where were you over 14 years? Food bank usage up 5,000%. That's 5,000%. Homelessness up to 120%. Hospital waiting lists up at 210%. All of those figures can go on and on. So forgive me for buying into this fake sincerity. The country is in a state because of the government of the day, the last 14 years. This council can do better than its predecessor administration, and it will do better. We're already getting involved. Those letters that you want us to write, absolutely. That we're already writing to the Warwickshire County Council. 3.5 million household support fund in the last 6 months. Confirmed today, this council hasn't really got involved in how that should be spent with rugby. We will going forward. One of our key priorities in the new corporate strategy coming out is about reducing inequality. So I'm very keen to promote an idea of a cross-party working group on the anti-poverty issue. So all of this energy, let's put it to good use. Let's get the politics out of the way today, and tomorrow we can work to help all those in need. Thank you.
Councillor Picker.
I think the phrase is to govern is to choose, and you spoke about choices and the last 14 years and budgetary black holes. There is no money left. That's what we inherited in 2010. So don't talk to us about trying to fix the stable door after the horse has bolted. We spent many years doing it, and then as Councillor New referred to, we have had a few challenges in the last few years. And I think what's fascinated me about this, because Councillor Slinger, as the new MP, I can tell you, having worked in an MP's office for a number of years, you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. And I suspect you've had a few bad days recently. And I do sympathise, because you sometimes have to make very difficult choices. But the thing that fascinates me, and it does genuinely fascinate me about this particular item, is number 3. I think there's a cross-party basis on all of this, that we want to drive up the number of people applying for pension credit. We want to make sure that funding goes to where it needs to go. here's the thing, though. The Treasury's own forecasts say that if the number of people who are eligible for pension credit take it up on the back of the winter fuel payments, it'll end up costing the taxpayer more than if you just left winter fuel payments alone. So the argument that's being made by the current government that this is a budgetary black hole that needs fixing. A, winter fuel payment doesn't touch the sides. It just doesn't. Like, if you look at some of the things that the new government has chosen to do, those add significantly more than this ever will. So we're talking about hardship and decisions. This is a decision that I genuinely cannot fathom the logic of. Because it's, at best, you are going to increase the number of people claiming pension credit, which is going to end up costing the taxpayer more than just having winter fuel payments as a universal benefit, which, by the way, was the rationale when Gordon Brown introduced it in 97 or 98. I must confess I wasn't following politics quite as closely then. So the argument was always it was more expensive to means test with the winter fuel payment. That's why it's a universal benefit. Now, for what it's worth, personally, I actually think there is an argument that you could look at means testing more. You could look at trying to address the cliff edge. And if you want to talk about addressing cliff edges, one of the greatest success stories of the last government was the introduction of universal credit and what that did to remove the cliff edge faced by people claiming in-work benefits. Because instead of having you earn so much and then you lose everything, you had a taper rate. Now, universal credit is a proven success story. It was invaluable during COVID to enable, COVID, to address some of the challenges we faced. So the whole thing from government just seems completely ill-conceived, has caused far more harm than it is going to solve any kind of problem. I don't think fiscally stacks up, if I'm entirely honest. And it's just, I remember sitting there watching the government that I worked for make unforced errors, and I suspected we'd see unforced errors from the Labour government, but I must confess I wasn't expecting it this soon.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a new councillor, I'm not being fully aware of our constitution, and perhaps I should, and I'm still on a learning curve. I'm sat here feeling a bit uncomfortable that it feels like we're replicating a national debate within local government, and I'm not sure that this is actually our remit to do so. If there's been some leniency to allow this to happen, in a way I'm kind of glad, because I think we do need to have a conversation about it. And just looking at the motion then, so I'm going to bring us back to local government and what we're about and what Councillor Parker was saying. You know, we're about local government and mitigating anything that we think might harm our residents and the most vulnerable people in society. And so going to the motion then, you know, number 3, we're already doing. We've got a costed plan to get the comms out. I think somebody mentioned about email and, you know, but barriers to engagement. So we're, you know, costing post, you know, letters by post and things like that. So that work is happening and ongoing. Councillor Moran mentioned some other measures that we're taking. In terms of you know, as councillors, we did the sleep out to help out before we with Hope 4. You know, we're very supportive for Food Bank, and it's a real shame, really, in our society we're so reliant on Food Bank, and I could go on, but I'm not going to get drawn into national politics again. I just want to bring us back to what we're here for, which is local politics and what we can do. And I am frustrated by this motion, which is just, it is, to my mind, it is contrived to bring a national debate into local government that doesn't feel appropriate. And actually the conversation we should be having is about, you know, what our residents need. And this isn't, you know, this motion doesn't effectively do that. Councillor Moran's speech does. We'll get on and we will deliver that.
Councillor O'Rourke.
Thank you. Can I start by picking up the sort of message we had from Councillor Ian Picker a little while ago about, oh dear, if we help the very poorest in our society, it's going to cost us more than giving everybody £300. Well, surely it's right to be helping the most vulnerable in our communities. I'd like to think that we are all committed to doing the best that we can for the people of Rugby. I don't think I've got too much to prove. I've raised lots of money for the food bank locally. We talk about poverty. We have 5,000 children in Rugby that are living in food poverty. In 2012, we had 200 food banks. If you see what we've got now, in 2012, we had very few food banks and about 1,000 people that were accessing them. At the moment, we've got over 3 million people in this country that are relying on donations that the good people of Rugby and the whole of the country are making to actually sort of feed those people. What have you done to sort that out? We, as a group, are committed to actually doing the best we can to solve some of those very difficult challenges that people locally, that families are facing. Just before Christmas, my husband was still alive, and both myself and Brendan were in receipt of the winter fuel allowance. And I know it's a personal choice, but Brendan said to me, look, we really don't need this money. And I said, no, I know we don't. So we went and we bought lots and lots of Christmas treats and we donated them to the food bank. So, yes, it is a concern that some people are going to struggle, but I think I'm calling on all of you. We all need to do the best we can and live the best lives we can and do the best we can for the people of Rugby. All of them, not just pensioners, all of those that are living in poverty, all of those that are really struggling, all of those people, families that are working, 2 people working, where they've got mortgages that have gone up by 300 or 400. I'll hear what you say about digital exclusion as well, Councillor Simpson-Vince. We know that's a big issue in my ward. It certainly is, but, you know, we can't just say, oh, let's not bother because it's too difficult. We've got to do the best we can to make sure those that, you know, that those at greater risk are helped and support. And not too long ago, well, I've been involved in these, just another example of where we really get things wrong, about sort of digitising these sort of parking meters in Rugby, and as a result of that, in my ward, and as a result of that, there's a lot of people living on their own, and informal carers now can't get in because we're not prepared to be flexible enough to allow people to have a paper, you know, a paper permit. I'm not giving up on that. You don't know what I've done, but I've been calling people out on it, and I've been challenging the county council about what they're doing, because if they truly want to address health inequalities, then they need to get their own house in order first. So we need to get our own house in order. We are not government. We are here to do the best we can for the people of Rugby. So I'll call on all of you to work with us to actually do that. We've made a pledge to do that in our manifesto that, you know, we took forward, and we will do that. We'd like to do it with you. Lots of the things that are in that notice of motion I agree with in terms of the campaigning and, around raising awareness. The fourth one about working in partnership is, I mean, I think I've said that all through my time in this chamber. It's absolutely essential that we do that, particularly through our place-based care now. And I'm not really seeing any big actions at the moment, but I'm absolutely determined that we will see actions and we will start speaking up for the people of Rugby. So please just bear in mind, there's lots of people suffering out there. There's lots of people need our help. Let's see what we can do, and let's not play this political point-scoring game. Thank you.
Are there any more speakers? No? Oh, Councillor Slinger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for bringing the notice of motion before the Chamber, and thank you for the kind comments of councillors on the opposite side about my election as MP. I have a lot of sympathy with what Councillor Robinson said regarding the national debate and the focus of this chamber being the way that we are doing what we can for our residents locally. However, I think it's incumbent upon me to explain my perspective on this. And so I'll do so, though, in a tone that I hope reflects the importance that we don't descend into any kind of personal insults or attacks. The first thing I want to say is that the government that I'm very proud to support in the House of Commons did not want to take this decision. It's not something that any of us or I wanted to do. But as others have alluded to, an audit of the national finances found a £22 billion black hole. And that was something that could not simply be brushed under the carpet, kicked into the long grass. It resulted from unfunded promises, from irresponsible policy making that didn't have the money to back it up. And that was in the interests of absolutely nobody, including pensioners. So this government that I support is committed, first of all, to securing economic stability, which we hope in time will lead to economic growth. Now, it was a difficult decision, but it was the right decision. And it was not targeting pensioners specifically. 4 billion, at least 4 billion of other in-year savings were found, and there will be other difficult decisions to come. What we have done is targeted, as colleagues here have mentioned, the pensioners who need the winter fuel payment the most. And so there is a campaign underway to encourage people who are eligible to sign up. We're linking housing benefit with the pension credit to increase the number of people who receive the benefit. And there's additional support from the Household Support Fund that my colleagues in London have extended, specifically so that local authorities can provide additional support. Those are really important factors, but perhaps most important of all is the triple lock, which guarantees that every pensioner will be better off this year and in subsequent years. Better off despite the changes that we've made. Now, it's absolutely important that we achieve economic stability and the growth that will flow from that, and that will benefit all citizens, all age groups, young people and old people and pensioners. And actually, over time, and it's of great importance, I think, to this chamber and to all of our residents, over time, that means that we will be able to invest in local government, in the public services that the previous government, in my view, and in our view, did not invest enough in by a long stretch. And those public services, whether it's the health service, whether it's the services that this council so brilliantly provides in difficult circumstances, whether it's a myriad of support to our community, those will be invested in over time. And that can only happen if the government takes the tough, difficult decisions that are needed to stabilise the economy and get growth in our economy. And those public services will benefit all of us, all of our residents, including pensioners. And I hope that just sets out some of the national issues and as they affect my colleagues here as they seek to do everything they can to play their part in ensuring that as much support goes to pensioners as is possible. But let's not forget, all pensioners are going to benefit from the triple lock that this government is proud to support. Thank you.
Are there any more speakers? No. Okay, Councillor New, you're right to reply.
Sorry, could I?
Sorry. Oh, sorry.
Just one little point.
Sorry, Councillor Garcia.
Thank you. Could I just point out that the triple lock is a Conservative policy? Thank you.
Okay. Councillor New, you're right to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's reassuring, Mr. Mayor, that our colleagues are looking at ways to support our most vulnerable residents, and I have to say this is a local issue because it is affecting a huge amount of our local residents. So it is something that we do need to look at. Just one thing for our MP, the 10 billion that was the windfall, why is that not being considered as part of filling that black hole that is mentioned?
Okay, I shall now put the motion to the vote.
Mr Mayor, can I ask for a recorded vote, please?
Okay, another two people.
Mr Mayor, I'll second that.
Okay. and Councillor Park. I'll hand over to you. Okay, I'm going to hand over to the Deputy Chief Executive to do the recorded vote.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll call out councillors' names individually. If you could reply for, against or abstain, I'd be grateful. So starting with Councillor Barnett. Yes. Councillor Bennett. Vote for. Councillor Brown.
Against.
Councillor Daly.
For.
Councillor Claire Edwards. Councillor Dumbleton. For. Councillor Sam Edwards. For. Councillor Freeman. Yes. Councillor Garcia.
For.
Councillor Gillias.
For.
Councillor Harrington. Yes. Councillor Hassel.
For.
Councillor Henderson. Councillor Howling.
For.
Councillor Carridia. Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Lewis. Councillor Livesey. Councillor Maudis. Councillor Mackenzie.
For.
Councillor Mystery. Councillor Moran. Councillor Newt.
For.
Councillor O'Rourke. Councillor Parker.
For.
Councillor Picker. Councillor Poole.
For.
Councillor Robinson. Councillor Roodhouse. Councillor Russell. Councillor Sanderson.
For.
Councillor Sayani. Councillor Simpson-Vince. Councillor Slinger. Councillor Srivastava. For, sorry. Councillor Thomas. Councillor Timms. Councillor Trimble. Councillor Ward.
For.
And Councillor Willis.
For.
Thank you. So that's 27 votes for the motion and 13 votes against, so the motion is carried.
That concludes the business of the meeting. Thank you for your attendance.